I love it when I get an idea from one of my subscribers that's so good I pretty much immediately lock in that I'm gonna have to make a video about it. Over on Instagram, I put up a post of some of my old Ben 10 aliens as Xenomorphs, and the main man Wyatt suggested that I take Ice Age characters and turn them into Xenomorphs next. I've been really enjoying the show Alien Earth, and if you've seen that, you probably get why this idea makes sense. Some of the main characters in that show watched the Ice Age movies as kids, and that has provided some funny, out-of-context shots from the show that include a character like Sid next to one of the main characters. And I thought the idea was brilliant, so thank you for the suggestion, Wyatt, and let's get into it now, shall we? Let's go!
Hit like if you want, subscribe if you feel like, but either way, enjoy the show.
Bustar Terminax mission log, quest 16 under new directives. And this was a weird one. This wasn't just a mission to track down Xenomorphs, I was also trying to track down a kid that I was pretty certain would be little more than a splatter of blood in the snow by the time I got to him. But this loaded dude working for some apparently big deal company called Weyland-Yutani offered me a lot of dough to either bring his son back, or at least a body so he could have a proper funeral. I wasn't banking on pulling that off, but figured with the dough he was offering, I could help with repairs back on the Ishkonigan Major Nature Preservation, which is still pretty banged up after my outlaw brother Overkill attacked. Plus, I needed to go tracking these Xenos anyway to get them off-world before they started messing up the Seroptis food chain again. See, this group of rich folks decided to head off for a fun little trip to Seroptis Jur, a planet I've tracked Xenos on before. It's sort of an unregulated nature preservation itself, full of these alien creatures called dinosaurs, though they've got other sorts of creatures there too. This parade of snargin' jokers thought it'd be a fun vacation to hike the northern glaciers of Seroptis, and one of them, this guy Runar Shonis, brought his wife and their toddler. That would have been a stupid thing to do even without factoring in that we hadn't 100% confirmed I'd gotten all the Xenos off that planet. Must have been more Xeno eggs there than I thought, or maybe a Xenomorph queen somewhere on world, because this collection of dopes was attacked by a pack of Xenos that had clearly incubated inside creatures called saber-toothed tigers. The Sabermorphs tore through most of the party. Runar got away, escaping to the group's ship, but only after seeing his wife torn to pieces and watching his son slide off down the side of a glacier out of sight. There were apparently too many Xenos for this guy to go after his kid himself. Coward move, if you ask me. Guy got off-world and called Ishkonigan Major to get in touch with me specifically. Turns out my cred has gone up a bit since locking up Overkill. Security cams caught a lot of what happened, and it's gotten around. This Runar guy asked for me and my partner, Aviva Orvad, to go after his kid. Said we weren't partners, but what the heck, she was up for a mission anyway, so I invited her along, and her little pet, Keto. Ship flew us over to the spot on Seroptis where the attack had gone down, and thankfully there hadn't been any new snowfall yet, so the tracks were still pretty fresh. We could tell that only one of the Xenos had gone after the kid who'd slid away, but I figured it would have caught the kid and torn him up pretty quick.
And if I recall correctly, Aviva suggested that perhaps the child could still be alive if the Xenomorph intended to use it as a trap to lure other humans in. Ultimately, this was not entirely accurate, but the child was still alive as she'd suggested.
Yeah, Ship, I ain't that petty. I was gonna give her credit for being right. Though what we found still wasn't what either of us could have expected. Seemed like the Sabermorph that had gotten to the kid had grouped up with a couple of other Xenos. Was just about the strangest snargin' pack of Xenos I'd ever seen. One was a gigantic mammoth Xeno, and the other, my personal favorite of the pack, had a smell so profoundly delectable I kinda want a cologne made from that adorable little critter.
To clarify for the log, Aviva confirmed that the scent of this particular Xenomorph, by the average person's standards, was so foul that she nearly vomited upon smelling it. Bustar's taste in scents seems to be similarly uncommon, as is his taste in what he considers cute.
I was most excited to design Sid for this episode because he's a pretty weird-looking character, and I knew weird would be fun to translate into kinda creepy. He ended up looking a little bit hammerhead shark-like the way I did him. It almost reminds me of my old Garchomp SCP from whatever episode of Pokemon SCPs I did that guy in. And I didn't want to give him eyes because Xenomorphs traditionally don't have eyes, or at least not ones you can see. But I wanted that head shape that Sid has that leads to eyes, so I just did round spots that look like they could be eyes, but they aren't really. And I really like the shape that it turned out. I also do color variants for all of the Xenomorphs in this episode, and as has happened a few times, I honestly think I like the black version of Sid better than the one that I intended to make for this episode. But I'm also happy with both, so let's take a look at them.
Xenomorph had excreted some sort of mucus onto the kid and stuck it on the fur on its back, so he wasn't going to be easy to snatch away. Luckily, the kid himself seemed to be having an okay time. He was pretty well wrapped up in warm clothes and was too young to get that he was riding on the back of a killing machine, so he was laughing away like this was a party. I think the thing's hide might have been thick enough that a shock from my pyrogalv wouldn't have done much, but either way I wasn't about to test that theory and accidentally shock the kid. Aviva and I were able to sneak up on the critters while they were trekking along the snow near a set of caves. Wasn't sure where they were headed, but we didn't get much of a chance to follow them before they caught on that we were watching. When the Sabermorph turned in our direction, I don't know who it was sensing, but it caught a whiff of us, and I figured it was going to start coming for us. Weirdly, the Xenos actually retreated into the caves. I ain't known these things to pull something like that, but I figured it might be a trap waiting for us or something. We followed after him, being real careful and keeping our eyes on the ceiling. Whole cave was basically made of ice, and it was kinda cool. We could even see some dinos frozen in the walls around us as we tracked after the Xenos. Made it easy for us that Runar's kid was making a bunch of usual toddler noises, so no matter how quiet the Xenos were moving, we could find him. Thought about sending Orvad's pet, Keto, on after him, but that thing is still a kid itself, and I don't trust it not to kill the Xenos. Or the toddler, for that matter. Anyway, we noticed the sound of the kid getting louder, so we knew we were getting close. Until it suddenly got real distant, and the kid started cracking up as he got farther and farther away super quick. We darted around a corner and saw that the Xenos had, I don't know, either slipped or jumped and started sliding down this massive ice chute that basically looked like a theme park slide. We weren't there to play around, but I ain't gonna lie, jumping down after him and sliding in pursuit was actually kind of fun.
It is wonderful to hear that you are in a place where you can find joy even in dangerous scenarios, Bustar. Enjoying your work is a key trait of a good life.
What can I say? Things are looking up for me lately. Overkill's locked up, I know where my brother Harold is now, and he's getting help too, and I even know that apparently my warlord Pop approves of my decision to stop killing the stuff I track. Plus, the Orvad kid is rubbing off on me. She's fun to have around now and then. But that ain't what this log is about. We got to the bottom of the slide, and I nearly got my neck chomped through by the tongue, nose, mouth situation on the big Xenomorph. Luckily, I was able to deke it out, and before the Sabermorph could pounce on me, Aviva got a good slash into its leg with the blades that pop out of her forearm. It was deep enough to make the thing retreat a little, but not enough to do any fatal harm. It was a good swing. Then the pungent, sloth-like Xeno took a couple swings too, but I didn't even have to dodge. That thing's aim was so horrible and it was so klutzy that it fell over after its third attempt at a strike. Soon after that, the Xenomorph scooped that guy up in his trunk and started retreating again. The Sabermorph held us back before following after them, moving a bit faster than we could over the snow. I could have chucked one of my stun discs on it, but I was kinda curious to see what they were up to. We made sure to stay close enough on their tracks that we'd know if they tried anything with the kid and could stop it, but we didn't try to close the gap. Eventually, we followed them all the way to Half Peak, one of the few significant landmarks on the map of this area. It's a pass between two mountains, and I knew it could be a perfect place to lure us into an ambush of other Xenos. But we had a mission and there was no backing down. We had to head in after them. Luckily, Aviva's been through enough now that she doesn't scare too easy either.
Now, I didn't have a ton of ideas going into this one, but I realized after I started that I could make it really unique and interesting in comparison to some of my other Xenomorphs. I mean, for one, the idea hit me to have his nose, or his trunk, be one of those Xenomorph mouths, and as soon as I thought of that, I thought, okay, well, what if we go a little bit weirder, and instead of it being a trunk coming out of his face, or where his nose would be, we have this furry trunk actually be coming out of its mouth, and being a really long, hairy version of the mouth that comes out of the Xenomorph's main mouth. And that just seemed like such a weird but also fitting concept that I knew I had to go for it, and I really like the result of that, and how his mouth kinda maybe fold's not the right word, but shapes around that trunk being able to stick out. And then I really like how the big tusks come together, and I inked them a little bit extra thick so that they'd stand out from the rest of his body, knowing that he's a pretty chunky guy, so there were going to be parts of his body kind of overlapping, and he'd be very bulbous and have less shape contrast, I guess. I still like the first drawing in this episode better, but I think this is the most unique one, and so I really like it for that. Like the previous one, I also do a more black alternate skin kind of color for this one. Although this one I also add a little bit more, not quite white, but a lighter gray in there to have more, I was going to say color contrast. I guess white and black aren't technically colors, but you know what I mean. And yeah, very happy with the result of this one too, so let's take a look at both color versions. Hey, Grumpy Cat Spaceman, welcome to the non-canonical advertising realm. You're just in time to help me advertise PopCross's latest in a long line of books, Fear of the Demon Hunters.
Where? Wait, that kid on the cover, is that book about the little snargin' brat that killed a bunch of adorable Xenos on me that one time?
Oh yeah, you met her, Arava, aka Fear herself, the now former Demon Queen. She's not the main character of the book, but yeah, it's pretty well a story about her redemption and the redemption of this gal Vivian, who done did some pretty bad stuff when she first got forced into having her own demon form by Fear herself, which she's using to hunt demons at the start of the story, but is also keeping a secret from her fellow demon hunters.
Well, no offense, but I ain't looking to read nothing about that little snorg bunter till she proves to me specifically why I shouldn't choke her out the next time I see her.
No? Would you start caring if the book has got 66 pages with full color art and the full bonus chapter, which includes an exclusive link to a bonus episode version of that chapter, available in both the paperback and ebook editions?
Why would I care about that?
You wouldn't really, that was more for the folks at home who might care. Same as the detail that the main artifact in the story gives anyone who uses it the power to channel the bodies and abilities of different demons. That's pretty sweet, huh?
Yeah, can't argue with that. Sounds sorta like the Xenotrix.
Well, that makes sense. Both those things was inspired by the Omnitrix in Ben 10. I mean, unless a lawyer asks, then it's just coincidence. Anyway, anyone who wants that or any of PopCross's other novels and coloring books can check out his Amazon bookstore and his Blurb bookstore, if you don't want to use Amazon. Both is linked in the description. Now back to Bustar thinking freaky looking stuff is adorable.
When we got into the pass at Half Peak, I thought I'd been proven right about this being an ambush. There were a bunch of Sabermorphs in there waiting. But it turned out they weren't waiting for us. They started closing in on the Mammomorph carrying the kid, and surprisingly, the one Sabermorph that had been trekking along with the Mammomorph actually started backing up the big critter, instead of falling in line with its own. I mean, they're all Xenomorphs, but you know what I'm saying, not falling in with the other Sabers. He started brawling with the head of the pack, while the others circled around and started picking fights with the Mammo and Sloth. They were doing okay, and in fact the klutzy Sloth Xeno even fell over and whipped its tail, I'm pretty sure accidentally, right through the neck of one of those Sabermorphs, killing it almost instantly. Obviously, I wasn't about to kill anything we were tracking myself, but a Xeno killing another is nature taking its course. Aviva and I started backing up the Mammomorph so that none of the Sabers would get the kid. The Mammo managed to stomp one of the other Sabers to death, and it was clear Aviva, Keto, and those two Xenos were going to be able to hold off the others, so I joined the fight between the, I guess, good Sabermorph and the leader of the others. Gave the bad one a few shocks with my galv, getting it disoriented enough for the good Sabermorph to chomp through the neck of the other. Felt kinda bad that I helped with that, but again, Xeno vs Xeno, kinda just a part of nature. Soon the last two living enemy Sabermorphs started retreating. Tossed my stun discs on them and they dropped pretty quick. I regrouped with Aviva and we squared off with the bizarre herd of Xenos with the kid. Nobody made a move for something like a full minute, until the Mammomorph slowly plucked the kid off its back with its trunk, and just reached the kid towards us. Just handed him over. That was when it clicked that, for whatever reason, these Xenos had actually been protecting the kid, even from us. I guess us showing that we wanted to help made him trust that we could take the kid home. I really don't know what to make of the whole scenario. For now, I made the probably bad decision to leave those three on world and see what happens. I took the downed Sabermorphs back to Ishkonigan Major and asked the Ishkonians what they thought. They were pretty well as confused as I was, but said it could be worth leaving those Xenos be for now. If they start messing with the food chain like the dinosaur Xenomorphs did, then, I'll have to track them down again and bring them in. But for now, it sorta feels like the right call leaving them there. Trusting a Xenomorph might be a terrible idea, but hey, it's what we're going with for now. A weird herd of Xenos for sure, but it's a sorta nice sign that maybe not all of them are relentless killing machines that need to be brought into the preservation. We got the kid back to his dad and got paid a whole lot just as promised. I'm definitely not hurting for money, so I let Aviva take a bunch of the cash and put the rest into the repairs of the Ishkonigan Major Nature Preservation. Overall, while it was definitely a weird mission, I'd also call it a good one.
Now, I like the result of this one, but it feels a little bit underwhelming compared to some of the others for me, and I think part of that is because I did a very similar type of xenomorph when I did a lion xenomorph in the Disney Xenomorphs episode with my drawing of Scar from The Lion King. But I did know going into this that I had a similar one recently, so I wanted to do something different enough to give a good reason why I would do this drawing. So for one thing, I decided to not give this one any hair. And while I think that does help distinguish it from the Scar Xenomorph, that also kinda takes away some of the texture variety from this one that some of the earlier drawings in this episode had. I mean, I guess that also makes it feel a little bit more close to a traditional Xenomorph, having more of just, you know, they don't actually have hair or fur in any of the ones that I remember seeing in anything. I also made sure to do a very different pose for this one. The Scar one, we're kind of looking up at it as if it's standing on Pride Rock or something. This one, I had it down and skulking, as if it's on the prowl ready to hunt. I think I could have made it go a bit lower, but I do think this is a pretty cool pose. Thinking about it now, maybe because I have actually done a drawing of Diego before, I adapted him into a fantasy armor in an old episode of famous animated characters as fantasy armors, maybe I should have done Scrat for the third drawing of this episode. But for the story and lore, it made more sense to have Diego in there, since I was essentially adapting the plot of the first Ice Age movie. Anyway, didn't mean to bash this one, I still think it's cool, but just like the earlier ones better. But let's take a look at the finished results.
If you enjoyed this, you might want to check out some of my other Xenomorph episodes. One of my most recent ones was turning Disney creatures into Xenomorphs, or you could start at the very beginning of the Bustar Terminax playlist, with a couple episodes of Minecraft mobs as Xenomorphs. But besides that, that's all for today, except of course for ending this video on some kind of positive or inspiring note, which said, when the dream is big enough, the odds don't matter. When you're going after some kind of big dream you have, don't think of yourself as some statistic when people say, only this tiny % of people actually make it in the thing you're going after. If I'd listened to that, whatever the % of people is that actually make it as professional YouTubers, I might have just given up. But I didn't care what the odds were. I knew I was going to keep building my channel on the side until it was successful enough to be my full-time job, knowing that the only way it wouldn't happen is if I died first or if I gave up. The odds aren't actually important when you decide you have to do something. I hope that's inspiring. I love you all, and I'll see you all in the next episode on Monday.